Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Ed Plus Data Analysis and Success Coaching Center presentation. You have three wonderful presenters today. First, heading the two projects being presented today is Chuck Hechel, who is the Senior Program Manager, IT. He has worked at the Success Center for 5 years with a focus on maintaining and improving the Success Center system and providing analytical support to coaches and management. Next, assisting Chuck in both projects is Gemma Wallace. Gemma joined ASU as a data analysis and the Ed Plus data analysis team in June. She was brought into this project due to her experience with data transformation and Alteryx. And last but not least is Lorie Twist, who is the Senior Management Research Analysis on the Ed Plus data analysis team. Lorie was not involved in the DB AMP or the Alteryx ETL process transfer project, but she is advising and assisting with the Success Coach Case Impact Analysis project. So welcome everyone, and I'm gonna let the presenters take it over.
Okay, hi everyone. So this is our agenda for today. This presentation is divided into 3 parts. In part 1, we'll provide an overview of success coaching and case triggers for background. Parts 2 and 3 will cover 2 different but related projects. Each involve efforts to improve the success coach case management process. These are in part 2, the DBM to Alteryx ETL process transfer project, and in part 3, the Success Coach Case Impact Analysis project. So let's move straight into part 1 with Chuck.
Thank you, Gemma. For the first part of our presentation, we're going to be answering 2 questions. The first question is, what is online success coaching? Not everyone may be familiar with the online success coach role, so it's important to understand this role in order to understand how we use data to drive results. And the second question we'll answer is, how does data drive a success coach's student outreach? In order to understand the role of success coaches, we need to understand why the role is so important to our online students. About 5 years ago, ASU Online identified specific challenges that online students face. I'll mention a couple. The obvious one is that online students are physically separated from ASU. This makes it more difficult to connect to the university and the university community. It's also harder to stay focused on school when you're doing it alone. And it's more difficult to learn about and access the myriad support services ASU offers, such as tutoring, crisis, or counseling services. Another problem is that many online students are shuffling full-time school with a full-time job and a full-time family. Time management is a serious issue for these students. To assist students in overcoming these challenges and others, Ed Plus launched the Success Coaching Center in 2016. Nearly every online student has access to a dedicated success coach who provides one-on-one assistance from the point they register for their first course through graduation. We know some students take breaks during their program, so whether or not a student is actively enrolled in classes, our team of success coaches continues to support them. So what do success coaches do? Let's start with what they don't do. They are not academic advisors. Success coaches do not provide information and guidance on courses, policies, or procedures specifically related to the student's program. Success coaches do help online students with navigating ASU resources and support services, time management, academic achievement, goal attainment, becoming part of the greater university community, and so much more. If we were to boil it down, the 2 main goals of a success coach are to keep online students continuously enrolled through graduation and support students in meeting their academic goals for every course. And since we are data people, here are a few statistics. The Coaching Center currently has about 90 success coaches who collectively support around 96,000 online students. On any given week, the Coaching Center makes about 7,500 phone calls and receives another 500. In addition, they'll hold about 1,250 Zoom, Slack, or phone appointments every week. This slide shows all the Salesforce case triggers we create for coaches using our automated process. A success coach case is basically a student-related issue or outreach opportunity to be addressed by a coach. There are different types of cases to address different student needs or problems. In addition to the auto-created cases listed on this slide, We'll also manually create cases for specific outreach campaigns. Coaches also have the ability to create cases to support a student's individual coaching plan. You'll hear us use the terms case types and case triggers interchangeably throughout this presentation. The term trigger comes from the fact that new case creation is triggered by student behaviors identified through various data points found in PeopleSoft, Salesforce, and Canvas. As part of these two Success Coach case management projects, we've created some case categories to identify cases by urgency. We decided that a green, yellow, red traffic light approach made the most sense. Green indicates that there are no current concerns about a student's academic achievement or retention. These cases involve either providing information to or gathering information from a student. Two examples of green triggers are the ASU Experience Reflection case type, where a coach will reach out to a student who is nearing the end of their program to reflect on what they've learned and where they're headed after graduation. And the new student welcome case type, which notifies a coach they have a new student assigned to them. Yellow triggers indicate a potential or less immediate difficulty which may impact a student's academic achievement or retention. For example, a difficult course trigger indicates a student has a difficult course coming up, or the not registered 1 month trigger informs a coach that it's a month out from the next session and the student still hasn't registered for courses. Red triggers mean there are immediate concerns which could impact either a student's academic achievement or their continuous enrollment. Two examples of red triggers are the D or E grade and disqualified triggers. So now we know what online success coaching is and what case triggers are. The next question is, how do data and cases drive a success coach's student outreach? Before we start answering this, it's important to note that coaches will adapt their student outreach to the individual needs of each student. We know that data will not give the full picture of a student's challenges and needs, but we feel we can use data to supplement the conversations coaches have with students. Success coaches have a number of data-related tools, but for this presentation, we'll be focusing on the process we use to create Salesforce cases to alert coaches of potential outreach opportunities where students may benefit from a call, email, or text to work through any challenges the student may be having, or to give encouragement and support them through their academic journey. Success coaches access and work their case triggers using the Coach portal within Enterprise Salesforce. In the last slide, we talked about how cases can be opened through an automated process or manually for ad hoc cases. A case can also be closed in two ways, either via resolution or cancellation. Case resolution is when a coach completes their outreach to the student and concludes the case. Cancellation occurs when a case is no longer relevant. Coaches can cancel cases themselves, or cases can be canceled by the automatic process under certain conditions. For example, auto cancellation occurs when the session ends for a session-specific case, which has not yet been resolved by a coach. So far, we've covered the success coach's role and how they use Salesforce case triggers to manage their student outreach. This next section, we'll discuss the challenges we've had from a data perspective on identifying outreach opportunities and creating Salesforce cases for coaches. We'll also detail the process we used while moving the case creation process from the Salesforce DBAMP server to Alteryx. I'll explain what DBAMP is in more detail in a future slide. So we had three main objectives in mind when we made the decision to move our Salesforce case creation process from DBAMP and into Alteryx. The first was a desire to reduce the delay between when PeopleSoft, Salesforce, and Canvas tables are updated to when case triggers are created. We wanted to find and fix process bugs, and we wanted to make both the automation process and the case triggers themselves better. So we used an ETL process, extract, transform, and load, to create our Salesforce triggers. The old ETL process involved the use of DBAMP. DBAMP is an integration system which allows the ASU databases to connect with, extract from, and load to the Salesforce database. While the DBAMP server integrates wonderfully with Salesforce, a major drawback is the SSIS process that loads PeopleSoft data tables into the DBAMP server. This data loads nightly into the data warehouse and then nightly into the DBAMP server, which means that when student data is changed in PeopleSoft, it could be 48 to 72 hours before it updates the DBAMP tables. It could then be another 24 hours before our ETL process creates and inserts Salesforce triggers into the Success Coach portal in another nightly process. A student's situation can change considerably during a delay of 3 to 4 days, making the new Salesforce case irrelevant and taking time away from the coach while they update and close the case. Another issue with the SSIS process is that it would periodically fail, resulting in bad data being inserted into Salesforce or duplicating existing cases. Also, the data available in DBAMP is limited by what was loaded from the SSIS process. Creating new SSIS packages, updating code, or fixing bugs in existing code needed to go through a sometimes lengthy ticketing and approval process. Due to these limitations, we made the decision to move our automated case creation process to Alteryx. Alteryx has a number of benefits over DBAMP. With Alteryx, we have access to a much wider data set. We would be able to create Salesforce case triggers the same night that PeopleSoft tables are updated. The entire process takes less than an hour from start to finish. And because we would own the process, we would be able to create new triggers, fix bugs, and update code directly in Alteryx without any delays.
Before I go on, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to just add them to the chat, and we'll try and answer them as we go along. Okay. So this slide provides a high-level overview of the whole ETL process. The first part of our process focuses on making sure the existing cache of case data is up to date. Next, we're creating new cases based on certain trigger conditions. Since we don't want to duplicate new cases created, we're checking against the now updated existing case table. So I'll take you now through our workflows. These went through numerous iterations before we settled on the ones we're showing you. So as I mentioned, the first part of our process is updating the existing cache of case records to reflect the most recent data. To accomplish this, we have two workflows. The first, 1A at the top, updates or closes existing cases and exports to an intermediate table in ADB. The second, 1B, pulls from the intermediate table and pushes to Salesforce. The reason we're using an intermediate table is to make checking and monitoring easier. The workflows allow for data to be pushed to either production or development environments depending on need. So starting with 1A and going from left to right, we're pulling from the existing Salesforce case table and appending term and session data. Existing cases are filtered into different sections based on update rules. So top section cases can only be closed by success coaches and are not auto-closed in this process. For example, disqualified and re-entry enrolled cases. The next two sections close cases respectively after term sessions end. The lower two sections deal with cases that have more complex update and closure conditions. Cases which have not been updated in this workflow are then filtered out here. So only updated cases go through for efficiency. Updated cases are pushed to an intermediate AUDB table and log tables are updated. So looking at the 1B workflow, it's pulling data from the intermediate table and then it's uploading it in batches to Salesforce. We require a batch upload macro so the upload sizes do not exceed those allowed by Salesforce. Inside of this batch upload macro is another macro, a detour macro, to prevent empty cases being created on empty runs. It's unlikely there will ever be a true empty run, but there might be an empty run due to a glitch, and the detour will prevent the resulting creation of empty cases, which the Salesforce uploader seems to do when it's initiated.
Hi, Gemma.
Yes.
Maria has a question. Since you're not using DBAMP to bring in data, does the data go through MDM process or what?
Let me just make sure I understood the question. Let me look at the chat now. To bring the data, does it go through MDM process? Chuck, maybe let you answer that.
Going into Alteryx, we're running SQL queries straight from ASU PMPRD out of the data warehouse.
Okay. I'm not gonna lie, I don't actually know what an MDM process is. I'm not really a database person. I'm an Alteryx person. But yeah, so basically we're just pulling, we're using queries to pull from the Salesforce existing case table directly into Alteryx. I hope that answered your question, but feel free to ask additional ones if we need to explain some more. Okay. So now we're going to cover points 2 and 3 from the ETL process overview slide. Creating new cases and checking against the now up-to-date existing case table to prevent duplicates. Again, we have 2 workflows. The first, 2A, creates new cases and checks against existing cases to prevent duplicates. It pushes the non-duplicate new cases to an intermediate table in AUDB. The second, 2B, pulls from the intermediate table and pushes to Salesforce. So going from left to right in 2A, over here, student, term, and coach data are pulled from PeopleSoft. Cases or new cases are then created based on certain conditions, and then they are matched over here to the existing Salesforce existing case table to remove duplicates. Cases are split into sections dependent on how they need to be matched with the existing cases to deduplicate them. Going from the top, we have the smallest match conditions, and going down, we have greater match conditions. Moving on to the right, over here, we're appending case type information, and then we're dealing with delegated resources. Coaches who have left ASU must have their cases reassigned. And at the end here, data is pushed to the intermediate table in AUDB, and logs are updated. Did I see another question?
It says, sorry, MDM is the identity management group that is verifying cleaning the data before going to SF. It looks at all the data from the different enterprise groups, alumni, service, recruitment, etc.
Okay. Jack, do you have anything else to add to that?
I don't. All of our data, it's going into the case table, the individual cases. So I think we're outside of that procedure.
Okay. Lovely. All right. And then moving on to section 2B. This is exactly the same as 1B, except that it's adding to the Salesforce case table rather than just updating existing records. The uploader again requires a batch upload and detour macros. All 4 workflows have automatic email checks built in, where we may encounter issues to alert us if they arise. Sections 1B and 2B also include flow controls to prevent errors causing a surge of updates or new cases making it through to Salesforce. And Chuck's going to take us through the testing that we did as part of this project.
Thanks, Gemma. Yeah, testing accuracy and efficiency are very important considerations for this project. We tested multiple times at every stage. We mirrored the results of our workflow of our new process with the existing DBM system process whenever possible. One example of efficiency testing involved pitting SQL against Alteryx. We wanted to know if it would be faster to join the same tables in SQL on every trigger query, or query the common table once and then use Alteryx tools to join that information to the other inputs. We designed 2 competing workflows to answer the speed test. The results showed that repeatedly joining to the same tables in the SQL queries was significantly faster than using Alteryx tools to join in union data. And this finding really impacted the design of the section 2A workflow. The greatest complication to testing came as a result of the improvements we made to the case triggers. Due to improved logic that determines term and session for each case, and the change to using a dynamic subject for some case types, we had to quality check individual cases without the benefit of a comparison to previous cases. So now let's take a look at our final steps before this process could be moved into production. The first was training. In addition to the technical challenges, the changes made to the case triggers required approvals and training. We were able to get initial approval to move forward with the project from key stakeholders, and thankfully, final approval was given once the final renditions of each case type was complete. The next step was training the coach leads on the changes to each case trigger type. Leads were then responsible for training their team of coaches. And then the final step is to continue to monitor case triggers daily to ensure data accuracy. And this is going to go on for as long as we're using case triggers.
Mute myself. So before we move on to discussing the next project, I want to talk about the journey that Chuck and I have traveled on to reach this point. At each stage, we've probably had as many disagreements as we have agreements, where we've disagreed as a result of different ideas and experiences, different approaches to problem solving, and different comfort zones. Mine being Alteryx, Chuck's being SQL. We have traversed these potential deadlocks through debate and compromise. If we had differing ideas, we each presented our ideas, argued for them, and sometimes tested them. Whoever's arguments or test results were stronger is whose idea we went with. I can definitely say that I've learned through this process. Of particular note, I better understand in which situations it's preferable to join data in an SQL statement or using Alteryx tools. And I think I can speak for both of us when I say we better appreciate things from the other's perspective. Things that are clear to me, for example, who have spent a long time looking at and developing complex Alteryx workflows, were not always clear to Chuck, since he also needs to understand and be comfortable with what we're developing. At certain points, we've sacrificed a small amount of efficiency for clarity, and vice versa with Chuck's SQL. For example, he could have easily incorporated the delegated resources section into the SQL inputs, but I felt we wanted to be clear that these are being dealt with and how they're being dealt with, so he agreed to move that section into the workflow proper. I would say that the end result is a fair balance between efficiency and clarity. So now we're going to move on to the final part of our presentation, which is, and Chuck's going to introduce that.
Yeah, so that concludes part 2. Part 3, we're going to be talking about the Success Coach case impact analysis. So the purpose of the case trigger analysis is to identify the effectiveness of the case triggers and their impact. What we want from this analysis is to ensure students get the help and attention they require to succeed, and that success coaches receive manageable workloads, which are easy to prioritize. Success coaches are busy. They have a lot of work to do. And if we can identify which case triggers are the most impactful, or identify case triggers that do not have much of an impact on student success, as defined by retention and academic outcomes, we'll be able to prioritize the most impactful case triggers and potentially reduce or eliminate those with little impact. Making the most of the time success coaches have with their students is the ultimate goal. So this is a 3-part project. Part A is an assessment of case triggers that have been created so far. We are specifically looking for whether they were closed by the coach after resolving the issue or canceled without resolution. Part B is an impact assessment of case triggers on success coach workloads, as well as success student retention and academic achievement. Part C will be a future evaluation of the changes we are making to the triggers and the trigger process. That's what this project is, but it's also important to keep in mind what this project isn't. This project is not an assessment of the effectiveness of individual success coaches, an investigation into how success coaches manage their cases and student outreach, or an investigation into success student demographics and how these factors influence success coach case outcomes.
Leading off with Part A, the current volume situation assessment, our first task was to decide what data we needed. So I created a dashboard mockup to help us both visualize how we want to tell our story and to figure out what data we needed to collect to do that. Its working name is the Success Coach Case Situation Room, because I'm sad and also kind of like it, so I'm going to push for that to be the final title. Now, please note this is nonsense data and it's not ASU formatted. The goal here was to move us forward with data collection rather than making it perfectly formatted. So this mock dash is displaying calculations by term, but the final deliverable will allow the user to view the calculations by term per session. Filters will include individual case selection, total cases, and categories, green, yellow, red, which Chuck covered earlier in the presentation. We want to convey 2 things with this dashboard: what the current new case volumes are looking like, and then how success coaches are coping with the new case volumes in terms of resolutions, auto cancellations, backlogs, student engagement. So with this dashboard, we'll be able to answer questions such as, if new case volumes are increasing, are coaches able to keep up with those volumes, or are backlogs and also cancellations increasing? Which case types are increasing in volume relative to others? Is student engagement keeping up with new case volumes? Do many students receive multiple yellow or red category case types? Or are certain case types associated with lower attention or academic achievement? So after data collection is data cleaning and analysis, and this is the stage we're currently at with this project. This workflow here is currently in development, it's not finished. So the cleaning process so far has involved splitting up multi-case records and standardizing and categorizing case types in order to analyze them. It's also involved filling in missing term session information and identifying duplicate cases. This workflow will be creating a table that can be fed into Tableau for the final dashboard. Going from left to right, we're pulling in data from the case tables in AUDB. We're filtering out cases prior to term 2181. Since before this date, the data is very inconsistent and not good for analysis. I'm applying some preliminary data cleaning before splitting up multi-case records. Here I'm identifying standard case types and applying logic to identify case types in non-standard subject fields. Next, I'm applying some duplicate identification to the records, and then I'm calculating some summaries that we will need to create the charts in the final dashboard. Over here on the far right are manual checks to ensure that subject splits, processes, duplicate identification, and logic are all working as intended and expected. So once all the data cleaning analysis are complete, the final table will be pushed to Tableau to create the final user dashboard. So the results and the analysis from part A of this project will inform the planning of part B. Lorie will now speak a little on the future stages of this project. Lorie.
Okay, so the goals for Part B are to determine if it is possible or desirable to prioritize case triggers and reduce the number of case triggers. Planning for Part B will be partially informed by the results from Part A, which is, as previously mentioned, is not yet complete. This will take the form of an impact assessment on the current case triggers for success coach workloads, as well as student retention and academic achievement. Possible modeling directions include, number one, assessing the impact of the case trigger variables based on retention and success, and number two, assessing case trigger variables plus additional variables in a more traditional measure of retention or success, with the case triggers functioning as overlying business rules. The goal of Part C is to assess the effectiveness of the case trigger adjustments. Efficacy of the results will begin once sufficient time has passed to make a fair assessment. Next slide, please.
And with that, we've pretty much made it to the end. Here's a quick summary. We are improving the speed and efficiency of the Success Coach case ETL process so coaches get cases in a more timely manner and can manage them better, and performing analysis that will inform decision-making on more targeted approaches to the case creation and management so that the most in-need students get the help they require and success coaches receive more manageable workloads that they can easily prioritize and process. With that, we'd love to answer any questions you might have.